Yeah, I mean, from my side in running the CI stuff, I don't have any objections. I think we briefly talked last week around trying to find an owner for GCC so that there was a little bit more clear of who was maintaining that. But I think, at the moment there's lack of that. So I think you're free to move forward. And as soon, I mean, everything passes CI, I don't see why that's a bad idea.
Okay.
And just for parity, we are looking at doing VS 2022 sometime here after the stable tag is finalized, and so I think that would make sense to kind of move the tools once we finalize the stable tag.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Are there other opens from anyone? I can give a brief kind of recap of where things have been, since this is kind of our once monthly European time zone friendly time. And again, I appreciate you guys' attendance. It seems like Edk2-platforms and that CI effort, those conversations have obviously stalled. I don't know. We've kind of been asking Mike to talk with the stewards to kind of get them to weigh in and put some more directive behind that and see where we want to take this project as far as some of those conversations. I see Andrew has joined, and maybe he'll have some opinions. I think that's going on, and then there's been a little bit of minor progress from some of the Intel platforms. They're kind of getting cleaned up to Core CI standards. I think, again, we've been asking Mike to talk with the stewards to drive some ownership of the remaining platforms and kind of get a clear picture. And I think last week Mike reported that Leif was going to start those conversations. At the moment, I haven't seen anything or heard anything additional. Andrew, are you up to speed on any of this stuff, or have opinions you want to share?
Yeah, no, I think you're correct, because you probably talked to Mike after we had our last meeting. So yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of a cat herding exercise.
Yes. Well, I guess thoughts, comments, anything else? Mike, since you just joined, we did have a brief, quick mention around GCC12 and moving the tools using that CI are using, moving those up to the latest versions after the stable tag. Besides that, I gave a minor recap of our last meeting and the status of the Edk2-platform CI work and the feature packages, the potential or need to restructure things and to get Edk2-platforms into a more sustainable and usable place. I think unless anyone else has topics or conversation, I don't think there's much else we have for today.
While we're here, we could actually, could we talk about how we are progressing with the Ext4Pkg CI enablement?
Yeah. I mean, I can give you the quick, I merged your changes into the private or the public branch I have that has Ext4 running Core CI. The last thing that I think I owe you, or I was planning to do, was to create the Azure pipelines files so that we can run it on the server. And then, there's still a few opens, obviously, around how to do this sustainably, but I think we have a short-term path. There still kind of is the bigger question is, once you have PR gates and Edk2-platforms, does that mean the contribution process changes to look more like Edk2, where the maintainers are required to submit a pull request and to put the push tag on it and let automation do the actual merge?
Right. Except for the Azure pipeline stuff, I'm actually not sure how we're actually merging this. So because Ext4Pkg is a moving target, since we added those, what was it, dictionary word exclusions for CI and whatever, and fixed ECC check, there were, I think, at least 5 more patches to the driver. So I'm honestly not in the mood to just continuously rebase the thing. So I would like, can we have some schedule when we will do like one rebase and then ensure the thing actually builds and then immediately merge it into EDK2 platforms before new patches roll in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I guess Mike or Andrew, I think we need to understand kind of the contribution process and those changes, and is there a roadmap for that? Would you just want to follow what EDK2 does? Is there desire by that community to do more? What's your thoughts?
I mean, the process here is that, you know, it's follow the existing process unless you propose doing something different on the up to the community. Like for example, we say like for EDK2 staging repo, you know, on a branch, the branch owner can do whatever they want. They want to do pull requests, they want to do email review, they get to decide what they want to do within that scope. So if you want to move to something different, that conversation is absolutely welcome. You know, propose something. Some of the feedback we've gotten in the past is the kind of the email review is there because they want the one place that has the complete history of the conversation of the changes and the changes there, so they don't have to go to multiple places to review that history if they're trying to look back in time at conversations. So just be aware that for the mainline repos, not the staging stuff, that's kind of one of the principles we've been following for a long time. And as I said, we're open to all kinds of discussions about changes. We're obviously working on some of those, but have had been lots of delays on getting moved to an alternate review forum.
What I actually meant in this conversation was it doesn't have a lot of sense to add PR tests or status checks to packages like Ext4 or you know, other places in EDK2 platforms unless you're going to block committing based on those, which is why in EDK2 we then turned on Mergify and we made the contribution process require, you know, be done through GitHub so that the status checks are required to be passed. Again, in this whole conversation, I feel like I don't have a skin in the game, given that I don't contribute to or maintain anything in EDK2 platforms. So we really need someone in that group to come forward with kind of the proposal and help take that across the finish line.
All right. So if like the example of Ext4, if you wanted to have a CI check that blocks commits, then we'd have to apply what we do similar to EDK2, where we have the GitHub Actions or Azure pipelines turned on with the branch protections there, and we'd have to have the idea of using a pull request with the push label to actually commit the change in the end, right?
Yep.
And I guess how close are we to being to that point, Sean, as far as like even for just even one of the feature packages, as far as having CI tests that are running that can give a status that could be blocking?
Yeah, so I think with my branch that's my copy, it's outdated at this point, but it should now be passing. And so I just need to author the Azure pipeline files, which, you know, are pretty trivial at this point to author. And so I've merged in Marvin's changes to that branch, and then I think Marvin and team have fixed some things upstream. And the belief we have right now is that package should pass, or would be very easy to get passing.
Okay, and then you'd also want to have the status on the README, right, with the tags from CI.
I mean,
for the packages that are covered.
yeah, I mean, we generally like to show the CI status to bring attention to that. Like, you know, I'm kind of lost for words. I think that the repo owners of this who want to drive this repo need to weigh in on what they want, right? These are all choices they get to make and investments they can or choose not to make.
Right. I think the current ask for an investigation, which has been ongoing, which is to get the feature packages so that they behave similar to the individual packages in the EDK2, right? As far as being able to have that test coverage through PyTools, right? Stewart PyTools execution on those feature packages. So it sounds like we're really close to that being present. And so it's whether or not we take that next step, which would be to then turn on the gating a commit if you don't pass CI.
Yeah, I think the general rule of thumb is it's not worth, you know, doing any of this testing work if we're not going to require it before commits. We'll just degrade over time. So yeah, I think that's where we're at. For we have a single package that is ready and that passes the test.
All right. So the Ext4 package, I know I think it's I don't know if that owner's here today. So I do agree that we have to find somebody that has to own, for example, the Azure Pipelines directory in the Edk2-platforms repo, because if anything breaks with CI, you have to have somebody that can go fix it. So I think that's probably the first conversation on the mailing list is to, you know, seek maintainers for Azure Pipelines and CI for Edk2-platforms feature packages as a starting point. And if we can get those, you know, volunteers to step up to maintain those and own those, then we could go to that next step of actually making it a blocking change.
Marvin, does that sound like a reasonable path?
Definitely does. Honestly, beforehand, I was under the impression that you were owning the CI and Azure stuff, and I'm quite surprised you're not, and we're not actually sure who owns them. So if somebody could just let us know once there is an owner and we can actually do our job, that would be nice.
I mean, I think the history here is that the Tools and CI meeting was asked to see if they could help improve the quality and usability of the Edk2-platforms repo. And it was decided that CI would be a big help there. As you know, myself and a few other members on my team, like we've done a lot of CI work in all the other repos, and so we offered to help stand it up, but it again isn't a repository that we have much influence on or much usage of today. And so we are, you know, I don't think we signed up to be the active owners of that process.
Okay, that was a misunderstanding. I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay, I can take that action item after the meeting to send out an email. I'm assuming Mike and Andrew, you know, you guys are going to have to help push here. I don't expect anybody to just reply and volunteer out of the, you know, out of their desire. So, but I'll send out the email if that gets the ball rolling.
Yeah, and you might clarify there's whether or not we're using GitHub Actions or Azure Pipelines. If you're thinking Azure Pipelines, there is that split admin ownership responsibility between the GitHub repository side and the Azure Pipelines configuration side. So we need access and you know, clear ownership for both sides.
Sure. Any opposition to trying to explore GitHub Actions, since that's clearly where the world is headed?
I think that's going to make things simpler overall if you consolidate to GitHub Actions. I know we've already deployed, is it CodeQL that runs through GitHub Actions as our on the EDK2 repo, so I know there's no issues in actually getting it to work. As far as the Stewart tools, I also I'm not aware of anything specific about Stewart that prevent it from being instantiated inside of GitHub Actions. There's just porting work to port the Azure pipelines specific information over into a GitHub action.
Okay. Sounds good.
So I don't know if you
May I
want
ask
to evaluate that on the EDK2 repo first to see what's possible. I also don't know necessarily what the impact is to our PR execution performance is in switching from Azure to GitHub as the runners.
Yeah, I think that's always been the one open. I'll have to do some research into if there's a way to request more resources, if we're going to use up our resources, those kind of problems. Yep.
May I ask a question about Azure pipelines?
Sure.
So I'm kind of used to GitHub Actions, so I kind of know how it works. If I'm forking EDK2 or EDK2 platforms or whatever, is there any way for me to run DCI on my repository without creating a pull request to the upstream?
On your fork, I don't think so without creating the pull request. Unless you have your own, pipeline account or have access into a, Azure pipelines are actually free as well for open source. So you could set up your own private version of that and run that on your fork.
Okay, thank you. Because with GitHub Actions, this actually just works out of the box. You fork, and if there's no assumption about the repository location in the GitHub Action files, it just works. You fork and it builds.
I can see that. Yeah, I think you have to build a connection from the pipelines to the GitHub Actions. That's the only step that you would need on the other side. We've done that a number of times, and a number of people have private forks that are able to run against actions, against the pipelines, and it's not hard. But I think as Mike pointed out, our expectation is the experience with GitHub and GitHub Actions will be better over time, and we want to slowly move there. It's been a moving target, and when we started this journey, the GitHub Actions didn't exist, so that is why we're in Azure Pipeline still.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. Are there any other topics for the day? So Oliver, I guess you'll also look at updating the containers to the newer GCC.
Yeah. I guess there will be a new image with the GCC12, and then we can use that one. Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of new GCC, we've run into problems where IA32 with just some GCC, what was it? I think Linux distributions of the compiler were actually enabling position-independent code by default, and we needed to manually disable it in base tools. Was there anything discovered on the mailing list or any patch to resolve the issue?
As far as I am aware, the main EDK2 repo should build on GCC12 on at least x86. But yeah, I would try. I would of course run the CI and build everything before anything gets purged, and this should then show up.
Right, thank you. Because I think the position-independent code by default is actually like a repository maintainer's decision. Like some distros may enable it and some may not. So I was just curious how that was going.
Yeah. Well, I'll check. Yeah, I ran into something similar a few weeks back, but this was on an older on an older branch, so it might be fixed by now.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there's no further items, we can be done for this week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you too. Bye.